everyone. We mentioned back in December that we were guests on a podcast called Running Scared with Coach Christine, and that did unfortunately get delayed due to technical difficulties. So it will now be airing on the 31st of January.
We are so excited for y'all to hear it. Back in September, when we launched, we covered the Ken and Barbie killers, and on Christine's show, we're doing a summarized version of the case. If you're a runner or you work out at all, you'll love the show. Let us know if you check it out. Good afternoon.
Hello.
We're here. We made it.
Welcome to the show.
Yep.
We're going to do our best today.
I'm Savannah.
I'm Elysia.
This is Burden of Proof.
All right.
We got home really late last night,
Yes, we
both of
did.
us, because we were hanging out. So we went to go see Hamilton, which was awesome.
Hamilton.
But we're both a little bit dead today because we
Yes.
got home super late. But I'm excited.
I am too, because this is also our first day recording for a couple weeks.
Yeah, we've not recorded anything since
Over the holidays.
Yeah, since before Christmas, and it's the 8th of January,
Yeah.
I think. So
So bear with us
yeah,
while we remember how to do our
I
jobs.
was gonna say, did we forget how to do this?
It sounds like we have.
a little bit.
All right. So,
I'm excited about this because from what I know of it, it's the first televised.
no, you're thinking of the last one we recorded.
Okay. That's why I was like hesitating. Tell me the
No.
answer.
This is the murder of Laurie show.
Oh, I'm thinking of Pamela Smart.
Yeah, we already did that one.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We'll give Savannah a second to catch
Okay.
up.
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to sync my brain. All right. Well, I'm super excited today to hear about Laurie's show.
Yes. Poor Laurie.
Poor Laurie.
All right. So, crack my knuckles. I don't actually crack my knuckles, but I'm going to pretend. All right. So, we're going to go all the way back to 1991, the ancient times of 1991. Just to give you an idea of like where we're at in history. Okay. President Bush had declared a ceasefire to the Gulf War.
Whoop.
The first steps were being taken to dissolve the Soviet Union. And Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested. This all happened around the time that Jeffrey
Okay.
Dahmer was caught.
Okay, so maybe that's why I haven't heard of it before.
Yeah, definitely nationwide news was focused on Dahmer at this time.
I don't know. Cannibals tend to take precedent.
Yeah.
In the media, anyway. Not in our hearts, but in the media.
Yes, for sure. But in the town of East Lampeter, Pennsylvania, lived a typical 16-year-old girl named Laurie Show, whose life was about to change drastically. Laurie was a well-liked and responsible student at, I'm going to probably butcher this, my apologies to everyone in Pennsylvania, Conestoga Valley High School. She lived with her single mom, Hazel, in a small second-floor condominium, worked at a retail store at a local strip mall. You know, nothing crazy. Living a normal 16-year-old life. In July of 1991, Laurie meets a guy named Lawrence Yunkin. Despite Lawrence being 4 years her senior, she spent about a week dating him, but abruptly ended the relationship, telling her mother that Lawrence had date raped her.
Aww.
They filed a police report, but held off on pressing charges.
Okay, that happens a lot.
Yes, it does. However, shortly after, Laurie began receiving threatening phone calls from 18-year-old Lisa Michelle Lambert, known as Michelle. Michelle was Lawrence's pregnant live-in girlfriend and was clearly not happy that they were, quote, I'm quoting myself, they were on a break, you know, like Ross and Rachel.
Uh-huh.
When he dated Laurie. So he literally broke up with Michelle, went out with Laurie for like a week or week and a half, and then got back together with Michelle.
Okay.
And Michelle was not happy.
They were on a break.
Yeah.
I do.
And she admits that they were on a break,
Yeah.
but she was pregnant, so she was being very territorial.
Well, I kind of get it.
Yeah. So Michelle accused Laurie of ruining her and her baby's life, despite Laurie cutting contact with Lawrence and not pressing charges.
Girly pop. Take
the win.
a chill pill.
She continued to call nonstop until Hazel Show had their phone number changed. It was then that Michelle began stalking Laurie.
Okay. I'm glad that her mom seems to be doing the right thing by Laurie in all of this so far.
Yes, she does. She does what she can.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that she knew that Laurie went out with this guy, like, or how old he was, or whatever. Like, if my 16-year-old said, I'm going on a date with a 20-year-old high school dropout, I would know. But I don't know that she knew.
She may not have known.
And we have discussed this, I think, on the Pamela Smart case, that, you know, especially even in the early 90s, like, age differences like that didn't
it wasn't that big of a deal.
Didn't pan out the way it would today.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
All right. So Michelle would show up when Laurie was out with friends and even go into her place of employment, regularly picking fights and making threats in front of witnesses.
Bestie.
One of the incidents happened while Laurie was shopping with her mom. Like, this girl was ballsy. She was ballsy. She had no fear. Hazel stated that Michelle approached yelling obscenities at Laurie and referenced Laurie having sex with Lawrence. Hazel told Michelle that Lawrence had raped Laurie and they had not yet pressed charges, but if she continued harassing Laurie, they would.
Go off, queen.
On November 22nd, 1991, Laurie was standing outside of the mall with some friends near one of the friends' vehicle truck. Okay, now I want to point out, this girl dated Lawrence for a week in July.
Yes.
It is now November.
Yes.
Get over it.
Aren't you pregnant? Should you not be a little bit more
focused on your baby and
about keeping your stress levels down and I don't know, not stalking a 16-year-old girl?
Yeah, you're 18, your boyfriend's 20, and you're stalking this 16-year-old girl that was naive and went out with your loser boyfriend. Like, for a week, and then ended it. Let it go. But she didn't. She approached the group of friends, yelling at Laurie, and the fight quickly escalated when Michelle grabbed Laurie by the hair, slamming her head into the side of the truck, and then threatened to kill her in front of all of the friends before walking away. Then she just, walked away. Yeah. Despite the threats...
Wait, okay, I have a question. What did Michelle want Laurie to do?
Yeah.
Why was she stalking? What was the purpose? What was the reason?
I'll kind of touch on that.
Okay.
There's a couple reasons, I think, but the main one that she claims is that it was because she was trying to scare her to not press charges. And I'm like, but she didn't press charges.
Going to.
And then the mother tells you that they will if you continue. But none of it makes any sense. It does not make sense. Okay. So despite the threats, they immediately filed a police report about the incident, but police did not start to investigate the claim until December 16th.
Okay.
And they said that even once they started investigating, they were having trouble locating Michelle. They went to Michelle's parents, and her parents didn't even claim that they didn't have an address for Michelle. Okay. Laurie then found out from some mutual acquaintances that Michelle had tried to recruit them in a plan to kidnap Laurie, assault her, tie her up in the middle of town, and cut off her hair. Letting that sink in.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Michelle only didn't follow through on the plan because some of the kids she had tried to recruit neglected to show up.
Okay.
So
this is gonna sound weird, but this is Pennsylvania?
yes,
What? Okay.
a relatively small town in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So unfortunately, even like trying to recruit people and then they no-show did not scare her into stopping. Just 3 days after the police had started that investigation on the assault incident, December 19th, Hazel Show received a call from someone claiming to be calling on behalf of Laurie's school guidance counselor. They wanted to schedule a meeting for the next morning at 7 a.m. Hazel didn't know. So, and with all the trouble and harassment that Laurie had been going through, I'm sure she thought getting that call was
something to do with
that,
school,
or yes, I'm sure.
Or maybe all the stress, her grades had slipped a little bit. Like,
Yes.
that makes perfect sense. Why would she question it?
Exactly. So the next morning, Hazel left for the meeting, leaving Laurie home alone to get ready for school. Just minutes after Hazel left the condo, there was a knock at the door. No.
I was going to make sound effects.
I'm going to do like old-timey radio shows. The neighbor below the show's condo reported that they had seen Hazel leave and shortly after heard their door slam. And just moments after that, they heard a thud.
Oh, not the thud.
Based on the crime scene, it appeared there had been a struggle when Laurie attempted to run into her bedroom to grab the phone. There was no way Laurie could have dialed fast enough. In just minutes, the assailant or assailants had stabbed Laurie in the back, tied her up, cut off chunks of her hair, slit her throat,
oh my gosh,
and walked out of the condo and through the parking lot, passing witnesses as if nothing happened.
Oh my God.
Hazel Show, do you need time to process?
I do, I think. Because that's
Yeah.
way more than necessary.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I hope we're going to get into the psychology behind this whole thing because I have some serious questions.
There's, like, we would have to be armchair psychologists. There's not a lot in the research that I could find that really discusses the full.
Yeah.
Now, this is a lot of he said, she said.
Yeah.
Like the whole case. There is evidence, but there's a lot of he said, she said.
Well, I think I'm going to go on a limb and say we know who did it.
Well, yeah, probably. But
all right,
even to this day, it's he said, she said.
I think I'm ready to hear about the mom again.
Okay,
Hazel.
this is the part I will do my best to get through without crying.
Oh, that's not good. Because if you're going to cry, I'm definitely going to cry.
Oh, I'll get through it. I can power through. Hazel Show arrived back at home just 25 minutes later. She reported that she screamed to her neighbor to call 911 and then got a kitchen knife to cut the rope from around Laurie's neck. She claimed that Laurie was able to whisper, "Michelle did it," and "I love you," before succumbing to her injuries.
I have chills. Oh my God.
Yeah. Here's the weird part for me. This rubbed me the wrong way. Despite the police not being able to locate Michelle regarding the stalking and harassment complaints, they managed to track her and Lawrence down at a bowling alley just outside of town that same night.
Well, I'm not shocked by that because stalking laws and like the investigation behind stalking is
ding, ding, ding.
always lackluster.
Yes.
Never taken seriously.
Exactly. So that becomes a thing in this case as well, but we'll get there. So they found them with a friend who also happened to be a student at the same high school as Laurie, 17-year-old Tabitha Buck. After arresting both Michelle and Lawrence on outstanding warrants, they questioned them about the murder. Both of them immediately implicated Tabitha Buck in the murder.
Sounds a bit rehearsed.
Tabitha was arrested but refused to talk at the advice of her attorney. Lawrence pretty much immediately made a deal with prosecutors for a sentence of just 7 years in exchange for his testimony against Michelle and Tabitha. So I'm going to go through like what he claims happened,
Okay.
and then we'll get into like what Michelle said. So Lawrence claimed that he took Michelle to Kmart the night before the murder, but waited in the car while she purchased rope and 2 ski masks. He stated that Michelle woke him early that morning, got dressed in some of his clothes, which he claims wasn't unusual as she was 7 months pregnant. And at that time, they couldn't afford maternity clothes, so she would just wear his bigger stuff. He said that he drove her to pick up Tabitha at approximately 6:30 a.m. and then dropped the 2 of them off along a wooded area that ran next to the show's condominium complex. Lawrence then claimed that he went to McDonald's for breakfast, but he arrived about 10 minutes before opening, so he waited, and that it only took him another like 5 minutes to get his order. So he was there for maybe 15 minutes. He stated that when he arrived back to the wooded area, Michelle and Tabitha weren't there, so he drove around and passed by the spot repeatedly before they showed up.
Okay. So he's just basically saying he was the driver.
Yes. He said that when he asked Michelle what happened, she said not to worry about it and that she would tell him later if he needed to know. Lawrence went on to tell police that they went back to his and Michelle's house where she and Tabitha took showers and changed. He claimed that Michelle told him at that point that Tabitha and Laurie were wrestling and Laurie accidentally got stabbed in the back, and that she and Tabitha agreed to slit Laurie's throat in order to put her out of her misery. So, he has knowledge of like the wounds.
Yes.
But he claims that he just knows because Michelle told him. Lawrence admitted that he and Michelle then washed the clothes that they had been wearing and then threw them in the dumpster behind Kmart after taking Tabitha to school. He claimed that Michelle then said she had to get rid of another bag, which they threw in a nearby river, and then later returned to the river to get the hoodie sweatshirt that she had been wearing that apparently didn't get put with the rest of the clothes.
Okay.
That bag that they threw in the river had the knife in it.
Okay.
Initially, Michelle tells police the story that she, Lawrence, and Tabitha had agreed to. So, like, initially, she's kind of concocting some story similar to what Lawrence had told them. Okay. But as she realizes that Lawrence had caved and gave a lot more detail, she went on to change her story several times.
Of course she did. Because doing this with other people, not to say how to get away with murder, but are you stupid? There's 3 of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But
yeah.
Anyway, detectives finally get her to sign a statement.
Okay.
And Michelle, in the statement, admits that it was her idea to go to Laurie's condo, but she claims that it was just because she wanted to talk to her. She claimed that Tabitha was the one to knock on the door alone because Hazel Show would recognize her.
Okay.
Since obviously she had been harassing. Once Tabitha went into the condo, Michelle let herself in and found Tabitha and Laurie in a physical struggle. Michelle claimed that Tabitha attacked Laurie with the knife and she froze because she was so scared.
Didn't she just like slam her head against a truck?
Yes.
So can't be that scared.
Yes. Despite claiming that Tabitha committed the stabbing, Michelle admitted to a lot that implicated herself as well, though. She admitted that she and Laurie had been fighting, that she was angry because Laurie had supposedly made up rumors about her to create a rift between her and Lawrence.
Bessie, I don't think she cares that much.
I'm pretty sure not. She confirmed that she made threats to kill Laurie, but said that it was only a figure of speech. She also...
in combined with stalking, not really a figure of
Yeah.
speech. That's a threat.
Yeah. She also admitted that she was the one who brought the bag containing a knife, rope, ski hats, and sunglasses. However, she had an explanation for all of those items.
I was about to say, so you brought the knife but didn't stab her?
You're going to love this. You're going to love it.
Oh, God.
It's fantastic.
Okay.
She said that she and Lawrence had plans to go cut down a Christmas tree later that day. Now, individually, she explained that the ski hats were to keep the wood chips out of their hair. The knife was to cut away the small branches off the base of the tree. The rope was for tying the tree to the car, obviously. And she even pointed out that obviously that's what the rope was for, because the rope that she bought had a picture of a guy tying a Christmas tree to the car on the packaging.
You know what? I'm going to give credit where credit is due.
No, wait, no.
Okay.
She was good. Like, those were all like kind of silly, but okay.
No, but I see where
Okay.
she's thinking she's going to get away with it.
Okay. But this is where she falls short.
Okay.
Because the best explanation of all
God.
is not that the sunglasses are for protecting their eyes so that chips don't get into them. But she specifically says the sunglasses were to prevent them from getting pink eye.
Do Christmas trees carry pink eye these days?
Well, you could get pink eye from a chip going in there and then just get an infection, but like that's
But
so
you can't
specific.
But here's
That's
the thing.
too
You
specific.
can't get pink eye. Your eye would be red. Do you think
Yeah, but I'm sure she doesn't understand like conjunctivitis, which is the actual medical term for pink eye.
I'm dead. That is so funny. Girl, it was going well. You got him. You didn't. They know it's you. But like,
still.
I get where
like-
she's coming from. Because technically, she could say that. And what are they going to do? Say,
Yeah.
you know?
So, despite all of it,
Hold on. I got to go get my sunglasses so I don't get pink
Michelle-
eye when I go to the beach.
Michelle maintained that it was Lawrence and Tabitha that had made the plan, but that, as far as she knew, it never involved murdering Laurie. She claimed that it was Lawrence who was nervous about Laurie pressing rape charges and that he wanted to, quote, get her in a way that would, quote, keep her mouth shut. She said that they did set up the fake meeting for Hazel to get her out of the house, but that the plan was just to pull Laurie outside of the condo and beat her up enough to put her in the hospital.
Oh, only enough to put her in the freaking hospital. This is what's pissing me off about this case is that it's pointless. Like,
Oh,
there's
all of it.
never
Yeah.
a good reason for like murder, but this is beyond ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely. So Michelle held to this story and has for a long time at this point. She held that she had told Lawrence and Tabitha that that's a stupid plan because Lawrence would get in just as much trouble for that as he would for the rape. And that
he would get in way more trouble for that than he would for the rape.
Yeah.
Because rape charges are not treated fairly. But
True. And she claimed that she didn't want to be involved because here's the other part, the other key factor that may or may not be true. She may just be making this up at this point.
okay.
But it would explain why she was acting so crazy and stalking her and harassing her beyond, is that she claimed that she believed Laurie was pregnant with Lawrence's kid as well.
But why would she think that?
I don't know. At this point, wouldn't it
She
be
would know.
obvious if she had sex with the man in July and then it's November? I'm thinking she would show by then.
Well, what do we? Math.
Well, listen, I got pregnant in July. I have an April baby. I got pregnant in July. And by Thanksgiving, people were going, wow, you've gotten really big. So I'm pretty sure that she would have
No.
shown.
Most people show by that point. I would say that's fair.
Yes. So did she really think that? Why would she think that? Like, who knows? again, with the psychology on this, I have no idea what this girl's problem is.
I don't know. Because we're not psychologists.
Yes. She claims that she tried to convince them, don't beat her up, don't do any of that. I just want to cut off. I don't know what her fascination with this girl's hair is. Okay.
It's pretty hair. I Googled her.
Laurie's hair is pretty?
Yeah. She's got cute curly hair.
Okay. Well, to me, I lived in that era. So we all look back at that time and go, oh God, the frizzy perm.
No, I think it's cute. Like, if I feel like in the 90s, that was cute.
It was popular to have perms and to do your bangs like that and everything, yes. But now that we're in our 40s, like we look back and go, what were we thinking? Yeah. Anyway, she seemed to have an obsession with Laurie's hair and just wanted to humiliate her. I guess that's the only way she felt she could humiliate her. So she claimed that she had put a pair of scissors in that bag with all the Christmas tree items.
Oh, to cut off the
cut
leaves.
off her hair. No, she claimed that she had scissors to cut off her hair and that's all they were going to do. But that once they got to the condo, she realized, oh, the scissors weren't there. I don't know what happened to them. And that it was Tabitha who said, that's fine. We can just take the knife and cut off her hair with the knife, as well as use some of it to cut some of the rope and tie her hands and feet.
This is horrible.
Michelle said that Lawrence suddenly developed a cough when they arrived, so he just dropped them off and went to McDonald's to get a drink. So that's the one thing they do agree on.
That he wasn't there.
That he,
went to McDonald's.
That he went to McDonald's.
But, okay. A cough, really?
Yeah.
I'm sick. I can't go murder her.
So she claimed that everything went sideways, that it was she who attempted to save Laurie from Tabitha. But ultimately, she fled the apartment alone and waited outside until Lawrence came back. And then when he asked her what happened, she told him Tabitha stabbed Laurie. He ran into the condo and she heard him yelling some stuff. And then she says that soon after, both he and Tabitha ran out and he's yelling, Tabby, get her, meaning Michelle, because Michelle was in such shock that she just froze. And so she claims that then they take off running and she's just running and she didn't even know like where she's running to. She was out of it. But the next thing she knows, they've come to his car along the road by the woods. Mm-hmm. Now, her story also contradicts Lawrence's story, and that she claims it was he and Tabitha who cleaned and disposed of everything, and that Lawrence told her that Tabitha ultimately killed Laurie. So there's really only two key things that they agree on, and that is that he went to McDonald's.
Yeah.
And that they're both pinning it on Tabitha.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, all three of them are arrested. Then it's a matter of how do we proceed?
Yeah, because how did it actually go down? And who gets what?
They did have witnesses. They had witness from McDonald's who said, yes, we saw him here. They had at least 3 witnesses of neighbors from the condo complex who heard and or saw things. So they could kind of like make a timeline based on that, coupled with Hazel's show when she left, when she came back home. So the trials, such drama. Lisa Michelle Lambert chose to have a bench trial, which did not pan out how she likely expected.
So for the listeners, what is a bench trial versus a jury trial versus...
Well, you want to explain it? I'll let you explain. I'm doing all the talking.
You should explain it.
Okay. So basically, I believe she chose a bench trial because a bench trial versus a jury trial, obviously most people know what a jury trial is. A bench trial is you're foregoing having a jury. You're not necessarily saying you're guilty, but you're saying, let's just have a judge decide it. Mm-hmm. So you got to convince the judge
yeah,
that you're not guilty and try to win over the judge as far as sentencing goes, like hardcore. The problem with it is that much of her defense relied solely on her own testimony, which contradicted pretty much all the witnesses that they had found. It was basically her word against Lawrence's as to the blood-spattered clothes that were disposed of, because even though they washed them, of course, they get the clothes and they do testing and they find Laurie's blood all over them.
Obviously.
So what it boils down to, though, is Lawrence telling the truth that Michelle had on his clothes, or they're his clothes.
Or they're his clothes. But I mean, if everybody said that he went to McDonald's, then...
Yeah, I just don't know that. I kind of wondered if there was any witnesses able to say, and I couldn't find that piece for sure, if the witnesses were able to say what he was wearing. Because he went through the drive-thru, so I'm guessing no. I'm guessing they were, like, recognized his face, his truck, or car, or whatever, but couldn't really specifically say, oh, yes, he was wearing these items.
But, I mean, it makes sense to me that she would be wearing his clothes because she's 7 months pregnant. And,
yeah.
I mean, logic.
Yes. But here's the thing about the clothes. Yes, that makes perfect sense. I wore my husband's stuff. I waited to get maternity clothes until I absolutely had to. However, there's a pretty big size discrepancy. Michelle isn't very big. And Lawrence was pretty tall. And he was kind of like an athletic looking guy.
Yeah.
So Michelle's defense team brought in what Michelle was wearing when she was arrested that same day for comparison. They did show, of course, that she did not necessarily need to wear that big of clothes, but it still doesn't prove that she wasn't. She still very much could have been like, I don't want my clothes getting ruined. Like, I'm going to wear these old clothes of yours. So, who knows? The only other evidence she had in her defense was a letter that she had written to Lawrence while they were in prison awaiting trial. The letter was literally written like a questionnaire, numbered and all. In it, she would make statements like, I know very well that you don't feel sad. You were happy. You weren't sad on Friday. And then in that same line, she would then ask, do you remember seeing blank dead? I say blank because when the letters had been presented in trial, the person's name had been crossed out, blacked out. Not redacted, like it was done before. They didn't do it for trial. So Lawrence did answer the questions in the letter, and many of them were yes, which sounded especially guilty when responding to the leading before the question, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if the question had just been asked directly, that may have proven, like, do you remember seeing if the person she's referring to is Laurie? Do you remember seeing Laurie dead? Okay. That would show that he was lying about his story, claiming that he would never went into the condo. But it still doesn't prove that he did it.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal, is reasonable doubt.
Exactly. But because there was that leading before each question, it made it seem like he's a lot more guilty.
Yeah.
So either way, it wasn't definitive proof, like you said, but it could have, in some people's minds, raised some doubt. But it came down to a he said, she said thing again, because the items crossed out was somebody's name. And Lawrence claimed that the letter had been altered after he answered, that the name was there when he answered. And he says that the name was actually of someone named Tressa, who I don't know who Tressa is. It's somebody who died that they knew, a friend, a family member, whatever.
Well, because I had that thought. I'm like, they're going to put somebody else's name there and then just act like it said Laurie.
Yes. So that's his claim. But expert testimony could show that the words had not been changed, but could not determine, obviously, when they got crossed out. Like, did he cross it out? Did she cross it out? Nobody knows. But the experts on both sides did agree that the name crossed out was Laurie, not Tressa. So.
Expert in what?
Yeah.
Handwriting? Like,
probably handwriting, because they did talk about, like, is that Michelle's handwriting? Is that his Lawrence's handwriting? So probably that. And they probably also have, even doing handwriting things, I would think that they can somehow test or look or do something to see. Because if it was crossed out on top, I would think underneath, because it wasn't crossed out with the same exact pen. There was multiple pens used on this because it was being passed back and forth between them. So
my instant thought was like, well, handwriting experts are typically, that kind of stuff comes out inconclusive a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just nosy.
But they had an expert. Each defense and prosecution had 2 different people look at it, and they both said, no, we can tell that underneath the crossing out says Laurie. So ultimately, the judge concluded that the letter was not enough to create a reasonable doubt, and Michelle was convicted of first-degree murder and criminal conspiracy. Because despite what the letter says, they had multiple witnesses of
and months of stalking and threats.
Exactly. Yes. So on July 20th, 1992, she was sentenced to life without parole. Her journey through the appeals system is just as complicated as her claims about what happened, and we'll get into those in a moment. First, I want to quickly go over what the other 2 received. Tabitha Buck continued to stay quiet throughout the investigation and trials. She was tried in October of 1992 and found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life. Now, Tabitha was just 17 years old at the time, so keep that in mind. Evidence was then found that Lawrence Yunkin lied in part of his testimony about Michelle and Tabitha. So the deal with the prosecution for 7 years was revoked, and instead he was found guilty of third-degree murder and sentenced to 10 to 20 years.
Don't lie.
Yes.
Well, don't kill anybody, but also don't lie.
So Lawrence was released in 2004 after serving 12 years. I'm pretty sure I found him on Facebook, which was interesting.
He didn't change his name?
Nope. And he looks like the same guy. Obviously older, but I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. Maybe not. So,
don't
nobody
go stalk him
on
Facebook, but
harass him. But it was one of the things when I Googled his name that popped up. Tabitha remained in prison as a model inmate until 2019, when she was released due to a change in federal law where the U.S. Supreme Court found life sentences of minors unconstitutional. I think we covered another case.
We have
the Christmas slayings.
Yeah, a couple like that. I feel like we've done more than one, too, like that.
Yeah. So the parole board made it very clear that her release was due to her positive record since incarceration, and gave a laundry list of conditions that her release is subject to, including maintaining employment, staying sober, mandatory mental health care, no contact with the victim's family, and no traveling or residing within Lancaster County.
Fair.
Fortunately for Tabitha, her family, she had actually just moved to Lancaster County, I think that school year, the year prior to this. So her family had apparently moved back to Oregon, where they were originally from. So
they're like, this is clearly not the place for us. So.
Yeah. So when I first read that, I was like, oh my God, can you imagine if your family was if she had originally been from there and she had generations of family there, and you get out, but you're like, sorry, I can't come visit you. I can't live there. I can't even travel to see you. So that would kind of suck. I know that's the consequence, but still. But fortunately for her family, I believe, had moved back to Oregon. So she was able to go there. Now, the appeals process for Michelle.
I love the appellate court. Don't you?
It's a doozy. So I did my best to sort through everything. I think I have an understanding of what happened. But if anybody listening is more experienced in the appellate process, or has more insight or corrections for me, like by all means, reach out to us because this was a lot. First, I'll kind of talk about the general process because the Pennsylvania appeals process is a little different than probably many other states.
Okay.
So, like other states, the first step is a post-sentence motion asking for a new trial or a new sentence. Next is the direct appeal. That is typically filed to their superior court, in which the court evaluates the transcripts from the original trial and hears oral arguments from each side. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky because depending on the complaints made for the appeal and whether new evidence or witnesses are available, the defendant may then file a Post-Conviction Relief Act petition, which is often presided over by the original trial judge.
So what's the difference going to be?
That's what's confusing to me. It's basically like a whole nother step that they have opportunity.
Is it like for bigger mistakes or things like that where they're like, well, we said this, but then actually, or there was an error in filing?
I think basically it's the difference between, most of the time when you file those direct appeals, you're saying the trial court erred. Yes. Whereas this gives you an opportunity. It's just a whole special thing of itself where instead of going to a strictly appellate court to say, oh, but we have new evidence, or I found this new witness, or, whatever new stuff you have to actually take it back to the original judge instead. Okay, so this went into play somewhere around the same time that Michelle was convicted. So it gets a little murky as to, I don't know that the way she and her defense attorneys and the mistake that they made, I don't know that it was like an intentional thing. Yeah. I think that it was murky because that Post-Conviction Relief Act was new. And so they just probably missed something there. But essentially, the direct appeals challenges, like I said, are for legal errors made by the trial court, whereas the PCRA typically challenges the effectiveness of the defense counsel, presents new evidence, and or responds to changes in constitutional law.
Okay.
So, if both of these methods fail, the defendant may then attempt an appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which, of course, any kind of Supreme Courts, for anybody that doesn't know, they may or may not hear the case as they limit the number of cases they review each year. Once all those state options are exhausted, the defendant may move on to an appeal of questions of federal law in the federal courts, all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which again limits cases. Michelle went wrong in that she skipped over at least one of her state options and wrote a handwritten letter of appeal directly to a U.S. district judge.
Okay.
Now, to the surprise of many, not only did that judge decide to hear the case.
What?
Yeah. He didn't just determine that there was a federal constitutional error, remanding the case with the opportunity for a new trial, but rather he stated that in his opinion, she was, quote, actually innocent, and released her from prison.
So, what now? We're talking about Michelle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as long, I have so many questions. First of all, who are you?
Yeah.
I can't believe that he heard the case because I feel like, and this is speculation because I'm not an attorney, isn't that a jurisdictional problem because it's not his jurisdiction yet?
Correct.
So how is he even allowed to do it?
He just did it.
He just did it?
He
Okay.
just did it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so-
Like, I have no idea. Like, everybody, yeah.
Okay. So, because if you're not in the
So-
legal field, you didn't learn about all of the jurisdiction issues, and it's a big thing that they cover in paralegal school is figuring out who needs to hear the case.
Yeah. What jurisdiction, meaning like which court,
Yes.
even down to what location, like
Yes.
what, yeah, it's a whole thing.
What county, which judge, which type
Yes.
of court,
Yes.
such as not the district
Not
attorney.
federal until you've exhausted all of your state options. So I don't know. What I couldn't determine was, did she just decide to write that letter on her own? Or did she have counsel at that point and they knew? I'm not sure.
Because
I could not
how
find.
would she have known who to write to?
Yes.
That's my question.
Because let me tell you, if you watch any of the actual docuseries, American Justice, that I believe they're like on A&E or something, she does not seem like a person who would be able to figure all that out.
Well, and jurisdiction issues on their own are kind of hard.
Yeah.
So,
You definitely have to take your time and make sure you're.
and it's I feel like with a lot of legal issues or research or writing, it's a muscle. You have to flex it.
Mhm.
And so for people who do it more often, it's pretty quick. But
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're doing and you've been in prison and you don't have a legal education,
Exactly.
how did she figure out which judge to write to? It's not like, I mean, I don't know. She may have just Googled it. I don't know what her situation is in prison.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I know they have law libraries, but I don't know the extent of what's there. I wouldn't know, basically.
I mean, I think that you can access the information. I just don't know that she would have, like, how would she have figured out? Because she does not, I don't know. She does not strike me as somebody who could have figured all that out on her own. But maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. I don't know. You can make an assessment for yourself by watching American Justice.
Yes.
So she actually was out of prison for 10 months. It took that long for, of course, the district attorney or whoever needed to take it back to the state courts and say this was done and this is not okay. So 10 months later, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that Michelle had, in fact, not exhausted all her state options. The U.S. district judge who opined her innocence eventually recused himself, and his replacement found no error by the trial court.
So it sounds like this guy was just biased for some reason.
Yeah. So the new judge basically says there was error, but nothing that would have changed the outcome.
Yeah. And that's what they're looking for.
And that's the difference. Yeah.
Yes. And that is what they're looking for. So to recap, district judge says there are errors and she's innocent. They go through a whole process. Come to find out, he says, oh no, I'm not fit to see this case over. So he steps down.
After multiple petitions for him to recuse himself.
Yes. After people asked.
Yes.
And then a new judge comes in and says, I don't know what that guy was on, but this is fine. So she needs to be in jail.
Exactly. So she remanded the case back to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, who then reinstated Michelle's sentence, stating she needed to start the process over again.
Yeah, just scrap all of your appeals and start over.
Back to prison she goes. And she then goes through the appellate process with a multitude of arguments for just about everything you can imagine. We would be here all day.
That's how appeals are.
So
they throw everything at the wall to see what sticks, which, I mean, tactics.
I will just touch on some of them that I found borderline comical or interesting, but fairly straightforward so that, you know, I'm not trying to play attorney here. So the first, of course, is Lawrence Yunkin lied about the letter, but that was like, why are you appealing that? That was like pretty much brought to light in the original trial. Like the experts said, no, it says Laurie, you know, whatever. So that was just silly. You're just throwing that in just to have a huge list. Also, number 2, the prosecution knew that Lawrence likely lied in part of his testimony and did what they were required to notify the court during the trial. So during the trial, when they figured out oh, he's likely lying about certain things. The prosecutor notified the court as they are supposed to.
Okay.
But her claim in her appeal is, well, they knew he was lying and he still testified. And, well, they can't stop. Like, that's not how it works.
They can't stop him from lying, but they can say, we don't believe that he's telling the truth.
Yes. And they did what they were supposed to.
Yeah.
They handled it the way they were supposed to. So, again, you don't really have, that's not a thing that's going to fly in your appeal. Now, her next claim, I don't really understand, because I'm not an attorney, I don't really understand how this can even make it into an appeal, but from everything I read, it did. So she claimed that Lawrence was abusive and coerced her to be a part of the whole thing.
This is new information.
Now, mind you, this may have come out, it may have been part of her defense at trial, but as I'm reading through this whole big long appeal document, it's like not mentioned until the actual appeals process. So
Okay.
I kind of feel like it didn't come out until like she didn't really have this. So she then all of a sudden had witnesses that claimed that Lawrence and Michelle's relationship was volatile and even abusive. However, there were also multiple witnesses who testified that Michelle stated on numerous occasions, without Lawrence being present, that she was going to kill Laurie, and even specifically said she's going to slit her throat.
Yeah.
So number 4 was that there's a whole argument about the crime scene photos, and it went something like this.
Picturing it.
Michelle claimed that the phone cord was not wrapped around Laurie's foot the way it was in the crime scene photo.
I know where this is going.
Which you might be thinking, how would she know if the phone cord was wrapped around Laurie's foot? After all, she said she left the condo and wasn't present in the final moments.
Yeah.
That was the first thing came to mind when I read that. However, upon further reading, it turned out that they're making that claim based on comparing the photos from the crime scene to drawings that one of the officers sketched on scene, and there's a discrepancy there. Okay.
So obviously this means that everything is fake and the world is a lie and there are lizard people and she's innocent.
Something like that, yes. So the sketches had inconsistencies with the photos, but were easily explained away by the officer who drew them, testifying that he was simply asked to create some rough sketches of the layout of the crime scene, and that the drawings are usually not entirely accurate.
Well,
because they're just doing so before the photographs are taken, because just in case as they're processing stuff, anything gets like drastically changed or something. That's it.
He couldn't draw the phone cord from that angle. Give the man a break.
And literally the phone cord is there, I believe. It's just like not around her ankle. It's like the phone is next to her foot and the phone cord is there. It's just in the drawing, it's not around her ankle. And in the photo, it is.
Again, he just couldn't draw it like that.
But Michelle has another explanation.
Okay. Of course she does.
She claimed that the police fabricated the photos to discredit her claim that it was Tabitha who struggled with Laurie, and that Tabitha threw the phone across the room, because that's what she told police in her statement. Except the problem is she did not say that in her statement.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
What she said in her statement was, quote, she grabbed the phone from Laurie and threw it down, which might end up landing right by her feet. Not to mention, and this is why this went nowhere, is that the items around Laurie could have easily been moved, bumped, changed by multiple people, including Hazel, who showed up at home and like cut her free from the rope, and the first responders.
Also, doesn't change anything.
Correct. So, number 5 and last was the post-conviction relief court found that the newly offered expert opinion on Laurie's ability to speak or whisper, Michelle did it, could not be considered after discovered evidence. Okay, so which is evidence that existed at the time of the original trial, but was only discovered after the conclusion of the trial, because it did not meet the requirements of Pennsylvania law, which states that evidence must, 1, have been unavailable at trial, 2, as exculpatory, meaning it will excuse, justify, or absolve the guilt of the defendant, and 3, it would have changed the outcome of the trial.
Yeah, it's hearsay.
So, none of the experts' opinions on the matter were able to establish that Laurie speaking would have been impossible. In fact, the opinion showed that it would have been possible. They can't say she definitely would have been able to, but they can't say she definitely would not have been able to.
Yeah, like it's more likely that she would have been able to than not have been able to.
I believe at least one of them said she likely would have been able to. She wouldn't be able to speak clearly.
Yeah.
But she would have been able to whisper or like kind of mutter something.
Yeah.
And somebody that knows her as well as her mother does very likely would have been able to tell what she was saying.
I think I can confidently say that if your throat had been slit, I could understand what you were saying.
Well, good. I really hope my throat is never slit.
We talk enough that I think we would be fine.
So other arguments included Brady violations, which is when exculpatory evidence is not disclosed as it should be, conspiracy that the police officers who were involved in the investigation had previously gang raped her, meaning Michelle, and had destroyed and planted evidence against her specifically, even though she never pressed charges.
I mean, I don't know.
So that we don't know. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't do it, but that's something.
And I'm definitely not saying that it doesn't happen.
Yes.
It definitely does.
Oh, yes. And unfortunately, it happens to her again. We'll get there in a second. So Michelle ended up appealing all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't believe the U.S. Supreme Court heard her case. Her appeals were exhausted as of 2005, and she is still in prison. But some other final outcomes of everything. In 2007, Michelle sued the Corrections Department over a claim that she was repeatedly raped and assaulted by a prison guard in 1996. The claim stated that the institution knew about it and did nothing to stop it. Michelle was ultimately awarded $35,000 in settlement, and the guard was sentenced to 1.5 to 3 years in prison.
Only 1.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That sucks, man.
In 2016, Michelle wrote a book about the murder in which she not only takes no responsibility for the murder itself, but even blames her actions leading up to the murder on abuse, misunderstandings, and accidents. Now, that's the part that I struggle with, is if she wants to claim, or maybe is properly claiming, I mean, if he raped Laurie, it's very possible that Lawrence Yunkin was abusive and terrible in his relationship with her. That's fine. But then she blames some of, according to, I wasn't going to read her book because I have no interest in putting money in the hands of somebody.
Well, she can't make money off of it, but.
Oh, well, true. But where's the money going?
Where's it going?
I don't. Yeah, no thanks.
Oh, I think in some states it goes to the victim's families.
It may, yes. So that might be okay, but I didn't have time to check, and I just didn't want to do that.
I get it, because I struggled. I was reading a book that was written by a defense attorney of somebody that I feel is guilty.
Yeah.
And I couldn't read it. And it was the defense attorney. It wasn't even the person. Yeah.
That's tough. So, according to this review of the book, she's saying that all her stalking things and phone calls and stuff were misunderstandings and accidents. I'm sorry.
No, they weren't. I'm sorry.
But multiple witnesses testified to your behavior.
You put her head in a truck.
Yeah. So That was hard. So she did end up having her baby, like
Yeah,
shortly
no, I
after
wanted
going
to
to
ask.
prison. She did end up having her baby. The baby went to, I believe her parents ended up raising the baby, which is, who knows how that turned out. I won't say that her being this way is her parents' fault, because I don't believe that. I believe that it's a
Yeah.
combination of nature and nurture, so who knows. But whenever possible, I want to end on a positive note.
Yes.
So here is the positive to come out of this whole ordeal. Hazel Show went on to advocate for tougher anti-stalking laws after Laurie's death.
Yes.
And in 1993, Pennsylvania updated their laws on harassment, stalking, and protective orders, which was fantastic. However, as I was reading through them,
They're still bad.
I felt like they're still minimal. Like,
Yeah.
I was reading through them and going, oh my God, what were they like before this?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But at least she got that done. And that's
good.
wonderful.
That's amazing.
But yeah, there's this whole thing. I can't, being a mom of teenagers myself, like and that's her only child. I believe
Oh.
Laurie Show was an only child. So I just can't.
Well, you did a fantastic job covering it.
Thank you.
That's a beast of an appeal process to sort through, and I know how
Yes,
hard
it
that is.
was.
So I appreciate all of the knowledge that you have bestowed.
Why, thank you.
Of course.
All right.
Well, if you have any questions, just let us know, guys, and I'm sure Elysia will be happy to assist.
Yes.
And
If you have any input on those appeals process, by all means. I'm always trying to understand that stuff more and more.
especially
So.
that weird thing that Pennsylvania is doing with the
Yeah.
weird step they've got going on.
Post-conviction
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Well, thank you guys for listening. See you next
Thanks.
week.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.